All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Apex 21 office hours. Today, we would like to talk about Apex 21 new features. My name is Mark Seefts. I'm the Senior Development Manager for Apex. In today's office hours, we'll be doing a whole bunch of demonstrations. Before we get started, though, I would like to point you to our apex.oracle.com homepage. apex.oracle.com. So if you want to read up on what's new in Apex 21, click on this See What's New in 21 button, and you'll see a list of all the main new features. And then when you want to get started and download Apex, you click on Get Started for Free. Then scroll down to Run Apex on Premises and click on Download. Now, be aware that some of us have issues, including myself right now, with this page serving up 19.2 in some regions. We're working on that, so stay patient. Some of you will see 20.1, others may still see 19.2. That should be resolved soon. All right, back to my slides. Instead of our customary speaker slide, I thought I show you a slide of all our Apex team members. So there's all our developers and product managers, and several of our team members here will be doing demonstrations for you today. We also always include our safe harbor statement. So if you touch on anything planned for the future version of Apex, cloud announcements and such, please be aware that those are subject to change. All right, so I want to briefly recap. 2 weeks ago, we had our Apex at Home event. This was an event organized by the Apex community, a 24-hour virtual conference, and we had close to 5,000 distinct people attending. And if you missed the event, or if you missed some of the 24 sessions, go to Apex at Home and watch the recordings. So this is at apex@home.me. And you can watch all the recordings of this event right here. All right, then next up, Apex office hours. This is what you're attending today, so thank you for being here. And just as with Apex at Home, we make all the recordings available of past office hours. We do these about once a month or so, and we have been doing them for a while. So just go to Apex office hours, and I have that open here somewhere, and watch all the recordings of previous events. All right, then Apex blogs. This is where we post announcements like new releases, updates on our events like Apex at Home, and frequently blog postings on new and interesting features and techniques. So definitely stop by this URL on a regular basis. Let me close this off. There you go. And then documentation. So about 2 weeks ago, we released our Apex 20.1 documentation. You can use a shortcut, apex.oracle.com/doc201, or click on the help link in your Apex environment. And I want to draw attention to the release notes in particular. This is where you find information on the new features being introduced, on the bugs that we've been fixing since our last release, and you also find information on deprecated and de-supported features. It's always important to take a look at that, to be aware of what features may go away, what features are being deprecated, what features will be de-supported. Deprecated means they are still part of the product, they are still supported, but we intend to remove them, or at least de-support them in an upcoming release, typically the next release after that. And some important deprecated features to note are the web listeners we are supporting, or still supporting with 20.1, Oracle HTTP Server, MockPL SQL, and the embedded PL SQL Gateway. So this means with Apex 20.2, our next release, what's Oracle REST Data Services will be the only supported web listener, the only supported configuration. We've also deprecated jQuery UI, so at some point in the future, this may go away. This isn't entirely in our hands because jQuery UI is a library that hasn't been maintained in over 3 years. So we just want to give everybody a heads up that there may be changes coming. So if you're developing custom JavaScript with jQuery UI, or if you're building plugins, maybe not use jQuery UI anymore. If you're just using our out-of-the-box components, there's no action to be taken. They will continue to function. Also, we are de-supporting Internet Explorer 11 in 20.2. So in 20.1, our current release, this is still supported, but it's deprecated. So now is a good time to get off IE 11 and start using more modern browsers. We also list tabular forms as being deprecated in our release notes. For now, that only refers to the create tabular form page wizards. But if you've been using tabular forms in the past, I would take a look at interactive grids and use those instead. It also applies to the Apex item API, which is still supported, but it's something that we would like to deprecate in the future. All right, for anything else, please take a look at the 20.1 release notes and see what has changed and what behavior may have changed and what bugs we fixed. All right, so there's a list of some of the marquee features that we introduced with Apex 20.1. There's a lot more, of course, but those are the ones that we'd like to talk to you about today. And we're going to do a series of demonstrations, starting with Redwood. And instead of running down this list, I'd like to start passing on presenter role to the next presenter. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then Shakib or Tim, if you could talk to us about Redwood and mega menus, please.
Right. Hi, everyone. So I'd like to talk to you about the new Redwood user experience in Apex 20.1. So when you first go to Apex, actually, if you go to apex.oracle.com, you'll see that the website already is in this new Redwood UI. But when you go to actually sign in, you'll also see that the login page has a new UI. And if you are using a Mac or any kind of platform that has a dark mode option, you'll see that that dark mode toggle will automatically be applied here as well. So right now I'm in light mode. If I just go into dark mode, you'll see the UI refreshes immediately. So for this place, we're relying on your operating system or your platform settings or your browser settings to determine whether it's dark mode or not. So I'm going to go and sign in. And currently I'm in light mode because my setting in my user menu is set to light, but I can go and toggle this to automatic and it'll respect my system settings. So no matter what my platform settings are, it'll go ahead and change those, change the UI to match that. Now, with the Redwood UI in Apex, this is again the first iteration of Redwood, so it'll be continually enhanced in future releases. But the idea is that it's going to better align with Oracle's new Redwood design system that Oracle is, we're using for really all of our upcoming applications. You'll see the Apex websites updated, the Oracle websites updated. Pretty much anything from Oracle is going to have this new design system applied to it. One thing I'd like to show you is with Universal Theme, there's a number of, there's a few new features, but one of them is the new mega menus. That's a new navigation style for your application. So I built this sample mega menus application just to kind of show you how this works. So here I've kind of hidden everything else except for the menu at the very top. So with a mega menu, the idea is that you can see all of your menu options at one time. So in this sample application, I'll show you a couple of different examples. This one kind of shows you one of everything, just to kind of show you the potential you have for customizing this. So for example, each top level item here, that is a top level navigation, that's a top level list. And again, this is all based on the same list component. So there's things you can do such as add icons, you can add descriptions, you can add badges, you can add descriptions for any level of items. So if you wanted to have descriptions for the secondary items, you can do that. And you can also control the layout of this as well using template options. So for example, if you want to display the same menu with 3 columns, here's how it would look. The other thing that I want to show you is a more realistic example, right? So this looks like a lot of things, but maybe this is not really realistic. So in this example here, here's what a typical mega menu might look like, right? You have a couple of different sections in your navigation, maybe 3 columns. And then you have some, a management section to the far right, which could be your admin screens and so on. Maybe you have some sub reports in here. So let's go and take a look at exactly what this list looks like behind the scenes. So if I go to edit my page, here what I'm doing is I'm overriding the navigation for this specific page to use these settings. So here are the template options applied here. And if I go into the actual list itself, these are the options that I have, right? These are the menu items within this specific component. But let's say I want to take a look at this management item. Those are the very top level items. So they have no parent, right? They are the parents. And for this management item, so if I go and set this right here, here are the three sub items for that. So again, this is just a normal list in Apex, and you can have as many of these as you like. If I go into any of these, you'll see the various custom attributes that we have as well. So if I scroll down a bit more, you'll see you can specify the badge value, the list item class, the menu item class. So I think there's enough flexibility in here to really give you, a lot of control over how your menu appears. And this is a great way to, show to your users all the various options or all the different navigation paths that you have. It's not ideal for all use cases. So when you create an application from scratch, using the Create Application Wizard, typically we're not going to use the mega menu, although you can select it because you just really have top level pages, right? You don't have those sub pages yet. But once you have a proper hierarchy of navigation for your application, then you can easily switch to this. So let me show you how you can switch to this mega menu. Let's go back into Apex right here. To change to the navigation menu, you go to UI attributes right here. In Apex 20.1, this screen has been reworked so that it shows you all of the items on the same page. You don't have to drill into that desktop UI as we did previously. And if I click on navigation menu, here are the settings, right? So the default for this application would be side when you created the application, but I can just change this to top. I can pick my mega menu right here, and then I apply my changes, and that's it. My application will be updated to use a mega menu. Now, there's a couple of settings here, and you can explore all of this in the Universal Theme sample application. So just go to apexorg.com/ut. This has been a minor visual refresh here, but if I go into, I believe it's under design and then navigation, you'll see a few different options here. So here's, one variation where you have just a few different items, and variation 2. So that's all for mega menus and the builder user experience in Redwood. In a future release of Apex, we plan to allow you to have the same Redwood user experience for your own applications using Universal Theme, but that's for a future release with a safe harbor statement. That's all. Back to you, Mark.
All right, thank you very much, Shakib. Next up, we have Patrick Wolf talking to us about friendly URLs.
I will talk about friendly URLs. Since the beginning of Apex, we are so used to this F*P URL syntax of Apex. It helps to immediately identify if it's an Apex application. But over time, that was always a criticism of many users that this is special and isn't like most web applications. And especially if you have public-facing Apex applications, it's not search engine optimized friendly. So that's why within Apex 20.1, we have added friendly URLs. Friendly URLs are automatically turned on for new applications if you create one, but you can also easily switch over an existing application to use friendly URLs. And I have here the sample application. If I go into the edit page and in the edit application properties, there is a flag called friendly URLs. And if I turn it on, the application, what we have seen here before, uses the legacy F** syntax. And as soon as I apply changes and run the application again, you will see that it immediately has a more standard web-based URL syntax. Everything up here is still the same what we had in the past. In this case here with HR, that's the schema path prefix, and I will show you in a minute where you can configure that. This R is needed by Apex to identify that it's a friendly URL. Next one is the application alias. This could also be the application ID if you haven't specified an application alias. And then you have the page alias or the page number. So for example, in this case, if I go to the next page, which I haven't changed yet, it will still show the Apex page ID. But if you want to make your application a little bit friendlier, you can go into the page designer. And in the application properties, you will find the page alias. And if I type in here, for example, customers, save it, and run it, you will see that it now shows a friendlier name instead of our page IDs. But let's go back so that you can see where you actually configure the name here for HR. So out of the box, it will use whatever how your schema is called. But you can change that if you go in. If you're an instance admin, you can go into Manage Services, set workspace preferences, and here in the SQL Workshop section, you have this path prefix, and that can be any unique name within your system. So that's how you can hide the actual name of your schema, for example. So that's one area. If you want to change the application alias, that's also easy to do. If you go back into the edit application properties, here you have the application alias, and this can be changed to anything what you want to have. What's also nice now with this new syntax or new friendly URLs, if you drill into one of the pages, you will also see that if you're passing something in, like you're setting session state within Apex, it's not this format what we had before, that you had to specify all page items, column, page item, and then the values. Here it's really that you immediately see which value is getting assigned to this page item. And if you have a public page with no authentication, all that session ID information is actually going away. So you will not see it. And that's how you can actually build quite nicely a search engine optimized pages. For you as a developer, beside switching this flag, nothing really changes. So for example, if I go into a page designer for this customers page and have a look at the link, it's still declarative. Nothing will actually change that you have to. I'm just changing one other field. I don't see it. For you as a developer, if you open the link builder, you will still specify here the page number. So you're not specifying page aliases. You're still picking the page items, and under the hood, Apex will automatically pick those page items and those aliases, how they have been configured in the system. So for you, nothing really changes. If you have to generate links on the fly, in the past you used, for example, apex_util.prepare URL, you can still do so, but we actually encourage you that you are going forward, you're using the apex_page.get_URL API. That's in now, I think, for 2 or 3 releases. And as you can see with these 2 examples here, you don't have to bother about the exact position where you have to put in session ID, or that you're putting in the debug information, all those kind of things, because with this simplified syntax where you really just reference the page number or the items, we will automatically take care of that. But in general, your existing application, if it does have F*P URLs within the application, that will still work fine. We will automatically convert them into friendly URLs.
All right, thank you very much, Patrick. That's great. And then next we have John Snyders showing us enhancements to faceted search.
Okay, so I'm going to show what was new in 20.1 for faceted search. There is an option to sort facets by count and other option to show the total count of rows. Large numbers can be formatted in a compact way. The two bigger enhancements are cascading list of values between facets and conditional facets. Both establish a relationship between the facets, but they work differently and are used for different purposes, which I'll show once I get the smaller features out of the way. So here's a faceted search page using the historical people data set from the Sample Interactive Grids app. The report is a classic report using the cards template. And one of the first new things you may notice is that it shows the total number of rows in the result set, and it's showing 4K instead of the exact number. And you can also see that compact numbers are used over here for the facet counts as well. And if you select one of the facets, you can see that the total is updated automatically, the counts are updated automatically, and all of this is done declaratively. What is a little less obvious is the ordering of the facet values. Here, the region and the country are in alphabetical order because that's the order that the list of values is defined in. But the category is ordered by the counts, with the most popular counts showing up at the top. In the previous release, the ordering was fixed most of the time. It was ordered by the facet counts, but now you have control over that. And the reason you need this control is that sometimes it's easier to find facet values if they are in well-known order, and sometimes it's more interesting to see the more numerous or popular facets at the top. So let's see how these three facets are configured. So sort by top counts is very easy. It's just this one new attribute, sort by top counts. It can either be on or off. If it's off, it will use whatever order is defined in the list of values. And if it's on, then the client side will automatically resort when the facet counts change, so that the items with the largest facet count are at the top. So we have three new attributes here: the show total row count, the total row count label, and compact number threshold. For the show total row count, you can either not have it at all, or you can have it added to the current facets area, or you can add a div or a span anywhere you like on your page and give an ID, and then you can specify the element ID. And that gives you the ability to put the total row count anywhere on the page that you like. And just a note that that it's actually a selector, so you need to have the hash sign in front of it, and it works exactly the same as the show current facets, where you can choose an element or just have it go in the default location. So the compact numbers threshold, it defaults to 10,000, and it specifies the point at which it will start using compact numbers like K or M for millions. And it's fully localized using the JET resource files. And but I chose the number 1 here because my sample data set only has 4,000 some odd records. If I set it to nothing, then you'll always see the exact counts of results. Let me show what that looks like. Clear this. So you can see that it's no longer using compact numbers. It's showing you the full number, but importantly, it's using a group separator now to make the numbers more readable. And this is automatically formatted on the client. This is also locale aware for the group separators. This client-side number formatting is currently only being used in faceted search, but the APIs are part of a new namespace, Apex Locale. And so if you're interested in adding any compact or nice number formatting to the client side, take a look at these APIs: format, compact number, and format number. So the next two features, cascading list of values and conditional facets, can be very powerful, but they should be used with care and probably sparingly. Because the main benefit of faceted search is that it puts the user in control of how they explore the multidimensional search space. Compare with hierarchical filtering that guides the user down a specific path to the results by showing and hiding filters and values based on previous choices made. With faceted search, each facet represents an independent dimension, and the facet values are points along that dimension. Relationships among the facets arise implicitly from the data rather than being implicitly imposed by the filtering controls. For example, it just so happens that before the common era, there were no people in the category of sports. But that doesn't mean there's some kind of relationship between category and the year people were born. It just happens to be what's in the data. On the contrary, there does exist a real relationship between the region and the country. If we look at all the countries, we can see there are quite a few of them. And so the new cascading facets lets you choose a region, and then the countries will be limited to just those in that region. You can always either select or search and select a country directly. And then if you do that, because the country can only be in one region, all the other counts of regions go to 0, and you just see this one. But by selecting a region first, it limits the number of choices under the country. So let's take a look at how that's configured. Under the country facet, there's a new area here called cascading list of values, where you specify the parent facet, and in that case, the country is a cascade of the region. And then you specify the column that's used in the list of values to filter the countries by. So if you were to look at this shared component definition of this list of values, you'll see that it has a region column. So you have to specify the name of that region here. Now, you have an option to make the parent required or not. If you make the parent required, let's take a look at what that does. Let me clear this first. Okay, so you notice that there's a region facet, then it jumps right to category. There's no country facet being shown. And the require parent means that you have to first choose a region, and then you can choose a country. If you then were to clear the region, the country choice goes away as well. So it really forces you to first choose a region and then choose a country. And so in that case, you are imposing a hierarchical order that the user must do their searching in, which may or may not be a good thing depending upon your use case. So the last main new feature is the conditional facet. And for that, we turn to the familiar emp table. In this example use case, there's a range facet on the commission, but it only applies if your job is salesman. So once I click on salesman, I will see a new facet, the commission range, show up. I can choose one of these, and now there's also a relationship here. So if I get rid of the job facet, the commission facet also goes away. So yeah, let me show how that one's configured. So what was that? That was the commission facet. We have a new section here called depending on, where you choose, so for the commission facet, I chose that it was dependent upon the job, and you have this fixed set of conditions, and you're limited to these, but they're pretty powerful because they have in list and equal and not equal. So those are primarily what you need when you're dealing with facets, which are most often checkboxes. So this is saying that the commission facet depends on the job being equal to salesman, as we've just seen. So both of the conditional facets and the cascading list of values establish a relationship between two facets. The difference between them is that conditional facets say that a facet only applies and is only shown when another facet meets a specified condition. Whereas cascading list of values, it's filtering the actual values of the facet based on the selected values of another facet. And for cascade, the facet may be shown or not depending upon the parent required setting. So just select some things here. One minor new thing is that the facet region supports the clear options in the URL, as has been the case for other kinds of reports. And so, for example, this button redirects to the same page, but with the reset report clear command set, which you can see in the new friendly URL syntax here. The RR means reset report. So that can be one way, either from within the page or when you have a link or button going to a faceted search page, you can clear the search, clear or reset the results on your way to that page. And the last thing I want to show is the lazy loading. Let me refresh this page so I can show what I mean by that. So the faceted search supports lazy loading. I'm going to open the console so we can see this more clearly. So this page has it's a region display selector. So there's just one page in this application, and the classic reports don't support lazy loading, so they've already been rendered on the page, but the facets regions on these two tabs have not yet rendered, and they have not made a request to the server to get the facet counts. As soon as I click on this people tab, you'll see down here in the console that it made a fetch to get the count, and you saw a little spinner there very quickly. Same thing for employees. Now when I click on the employees page again, it's going to now get the facets, facet counts. So just to, you may not often have tabs or other hidden faceted search regions on your page. Usually faceted search is like kind of the main page all by itself. But if you do, it's good to know that it's being efficient in how it loads data. That is it for, oh, one other thing, if you do this you need to make sure that the tabs are truly hidden when the page loads, and there's a extra little CSS rule you need. And that's it for faceted search.
All right, thank you very much, John. Just to address one question that pops up a few times, when is Apex 20.1 going to be available on Autonomous? We plan to have this be there within the next 30 to 45 days. And if you have other questions, please go to the Q&A. All right, next up we have Hilary talking to us about interactive grids.
Cool, thanks Mark. So for 20.1, we've introduced a couple of enhancements for interactive grids. The first of which is, let me just get rid of these photos over here. The first of which is URL filtering, or the ability to define links that allow you to link to an interactive grid and filter the information in that report based on information passed in the link. So the screenshot here depicts linking from a chart down to an interactive grid. So let's just take a closer look at that particular example. And I'm using the 20.1 sample charts app here. Just clicking on the new in 20.1. So we actually have a couple of examples specifically demoing this. So this particular chart is depicting the jobs by department, and the departments being 10, 20, and 30, as you see on the x-axis at the bottom. If I click on an element of the chart, I want to redirect to an interactive grid and have it filtered based upon the department of the chosen selected item. So in this case, it's an item for group or department 20. And I've come down to my interactive grid page where a filter has been defined. And just to prove that there is actually additional data in here, you can see. But that was defined via specification in the URL. So it's also setting a filter on a saved report for that interactive grid. Let's take a look at the link and how it was defined on that chart. So down in the chart at series level, we'll take a look at the link information. And let's try here. There we go. My page in question is 29. That's where my interactive grid resides. I want to pass in the depth no value from my chart query, and I want to have that set a depth no column on the interactive grid. So over here, I'm using the IG underscore prefix to identify that it is a column of the interactive grid. Now, this won't be anything new to those of you that are actively working with interactive reports. Very similar syntax. And next in the clear reset section, we've got the actions here for clearing regions. Or similarly, you could enter COR in the clear cache field here, and that will do the same thing. That will clear existing filters off the saved interactive grid that you were linking to. We also have this reset regions option here. Or similarly, you can enter or in the clear cache field here, and that will do the same thing. And that will reset the interactive grid back to its base report settings. Now here in the request, I guess this is the most interesting piece to take note of. We are using, again, syntax similar to interactive report functionality, where the first section I'm highlighting is essentially identifying the interactive grid on the page I'm linking to, using the IG square brackets, and then within those brackets, the EMP is the region static ID that I have defined on my interactive grid region. Then the latter part here, the EMP underscore details, that's my actual saved report name. So if you're actively working with interactive grids currently, you'll know already that we don't expose the option to set a static ID at saved report level, but that is something that we do hope to include in the next release, and safe harbor obviously. The idea there would be for future support of this URL filtering, you would enter the static ID for the saved report here rather than the report name. So that's just a quick overview of one of the options there, but let's come back in here. If you want to delve in further into the documentation on this, take a look at our user's guide. That's via the develop reports link. And There's a section 10.6.8 that completely covers this new feature. It includes the supported syntax and accompanying examples for each of the syntax options there. Again, very similar to the interactive report functionality that has existed for a number of releases now. But for a number of other examples, I've covered the sample charts one, but sample interactive grid and sample reporting apps in 20.1 also include specific examples. So you can take a look at those and get a better feel for how to incorporate them into your own apps. And then last but not least, we now have a documented Apex IG PL SQL API, and that is available through our API reference guide. And that's in section 19. And again, it is very similar to the functionality already supported for interactive report through the Apex IOR API. If I just drill back in here. Taking a quick look in the documentation, you can use the procedures that are documented in here if you are programmatically working with interactive grids in your apps to add filters or indeed clear a report or reset. And the procedures themselves are fully documented with accompanying examples to get a better feel for them. So that's just a quick overview, and I'll pass back to Mark now.
Right, thanks, Larry. And then next up, we have Menno giving us an update on PDF printing.
Yes, hi all. So I want to give you some new features as well about the interactive grid, and that we added PDF support, native PDF printing for interactive grids. So here I'm using the sample interactive grids application, and you can just go to any interactive grid on your page. If you edit this page, and you go to your interactive grid, under attributes, you now have a setting for PDF. So you can enable that as a download format, and it will use all the printing attributes. So this is different from HTML and CSV download that we had already for interactive grids. This will actually use some kind of formatting that you applied. So let's download one, for example. Click on PDF. You'll see a few different options. You can change the page size. For me now it's letter, and that's because letter and landscape are the defaults in the printing section attribute right here. But I can change it if I want, and I can include accessibility tags, and this will help users who need a screen reader, and I'll have a demo of that. But just hit the download button, it will download the PDF for you, and there it is. You see that not each column has the same width, so it uses the width of the interactive grid, but relative to the size of the page that you have in your PDF. So for instance, if I make my job smaller, like really small, it will not look very good. And you will see that it shrinked a lot. Now I told you about the accessibility tag, right? That you can include it. You can even send the PDF as email, by the way. But if you do this, include accessibility tags, and you open up a professional PDF reader, like mine is what you get. Well, on the right, you'll see the report itself, and on the left, you see the structure of the PDF itself. But this has a cost in performance and in download size, so we don't enable it by default, but if you need it, it's there. And the screen reader will see this is a header 1, which is basic reporting. Here's where the table starts, and here's an individual cell in the second row of the table body. And that's what it adds. Now the PDF itself can do more, so whatever you could do with the HTML download, you can do the same with the PDF download. If we go, for example, to column groups, I've enabled all features. So what I did is I have a control break on departments. I added 2 filters, 1 row level filter, everybody on leave, and 1 for the job with the president. I highlight the name, and then we summarize the salary. So that's this extra line that you see under each control break, and then we have overall value. Just simply hit download again, PDF, and you will see that it looks nice by default. The highlights, the control breaks, the column groups, everything is applied. One else thing I can show you is if you have multiple rows that don't fit one single page. Like for example, I'm using all the famous people from the Netherlands. If I download this one to PDF, this now has 3 pages, and all the rows are there from the first page. The header will repeat itself, and you have page numbers that you see right here. So that's all in place. People ask me, or not me, the team, well, I noticed that not all languages are available, like Chinese and Arabic characters. So we started with this simple PDF export for Interactive Grid, and we have more plans for the future. But just to show you the languages that we currently support are all the Latin European languages and the different other Latin languages as well, and Cyrillic. But the CGK languages, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, stuff like that, is not here yet. We're working on it. So yeah, I hope to show you that very soon. And that's it. The PDF is very simple. So back to Mark.
Thank you very much, Menno. That's great. All right, so we're running short on time. So unfortunately, the next few demos need to be sped up a little bit. Next up, we have Anthony talking to us about session timeout alerts.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so this is the new session timeout functionality available in Apex 20.1. To show you the difference. So in 19.2, if you were in the middle of a change in your Apex application, but you exceeded one of the timeouts, like the idle timeout, you might be working away on some text. You hit save, and at that point, you would get a session expired message, which should come up. There we go. So it's a reactive notification for the user, and they don't have any opportunity prior to that to extend their session. This was in 19.2. In 20.1, we've added a new feature called session timeout alerts, and you can configure the amount of time before the session times out that the alert will be displayed. The default is 5 minutes. In this application, I've set it to a sort of an artificially low amount for demonstration purposes. So we have a maximum session idle time of 60 seconds. So the longest time for inactivity allowed is 60, and 30 seconds prior to that, the user will get a warning, warning them of this and giving them the opportunity to extend their session. So if we run this page, or run the app rather, okay, we'll go into the application. So my VM has got a bit sleepy in waiting, so apologies. We'll go to the same report in 20.1. And if we load up the same kind of modal page, we will need to wait around sort of 15-20 seconds for this to kick in. But if we're working away on this form page, we might be making some changes. It might be quite a long form that you need to fill in. And if you're, instead of working away and then clicking save and then getting the session expired message, we should get an alert which warns the user that the session is about to expire. There we go, cool. And they have the opportunity to extend it. So here we can say, no, please extend. I'm still working on this form page. I can then go and apply those changes. And I have got that opportunity. So I've been proactively informed of that session that is about to expire, rather than after the fact when it might be too late to try and make the change. This is configurable at application, workspace, and instance level. And you can set all of those places to 0 if you wish to turn off the functionality. So if you want to turn it off at instance level, just define 0, or you can do it on an app or workspace by workspace basis. That's it. Back to you, Mark.
All right, thank you. So I wanted to briefly talk about remote deployment, and we have a few minutes left, so let me share my screen here. Here you go. So I have 2 instances running here, this locally running here. This one is Apex 20.1. This one here is Apex 20.2. This is both localhost, and this feature works in Apex 20.1 to 20.1, so you don't need 20.2. I just wanted to show you that I have 2 different instances. What I have here is one application demo that I created ahead of time. So I'm just going to log in here. So just like employees and products. Now what I want to do is I want to deploy this application to this instance. This instance. So the 20.2 instance in this case. So what I need to do this is I need to configure REST-enabled SQL data source. So when you go to your Workspace Utilities, go to REST-enabled SQL services, you can configure a separate instance as a REST-enabled SQL data source. This is what you would also be using if you build like reports and charts on REST-enabled SQL. But in this case, I want to use this as a deployment target. So imagine this being my production instance. I call it production, and this is using basic authentication. So I already configured this to point to this URL over here. And if you need to get that URL, you go to SQL Workshop, and you go to RESTful Web Services, and then you can look up the actual, or configure the actual URL right in here. So I already configured this ahead of time. So I'm going back to the application builder, navigate to my application, and then I go to export import. And this is like the old import and export of applications into a file and exporting it into a file and re-importing it. And this is what David Bliss was starting to show, that you can export into zip files now. But I want to go into the remote deployment. And I'm going to select my deployment server, which is this production server that I configured. I do see information about this deployment target. I click next. And that looks good. So run and build. I have all the usual attributes that you find when exporting applications. I do want to give this, well, I actually want to give this a new application ID. And then I deploy. And now it's taking this application export. It's sending it over via REST-enabled SQL to my the production server. And when I go back here, go to Apex and look at my applications, I now find this application for my dev instance available here in my prod instance. And I can go right ahead and run this just like I did on my dev instance. And of course, now I kind of shot myself in the foot because I configured authentication on this one, so I would have to add myself to the access control list. But you get the point. This has been now deployed to my production instance. All right, so with this, it's 9:58. We do have a few questions, so if anyone wants to raise them, some that haven't been answered yet or some that have been answered, ask more frequently, David or Joel or Doug, anyone?
I have one, Mark, that I could probably answer as well. So any plan to enable SAML-based authentication? Do you want to answer that? You want me to?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so we do have plans to support SAML natively. We are dependent upon some encryption algorithms being available in the database, which we're getting that fast-tracked. I don't know when that's going to be possible. I'd like to think maybe in 6 to 9 months and have them backport to the database. But it is truly our goal to have SAML-based authentication be available in Apex without any other middle tier infrastructure. Just like you can do OAuth 2 today, we'll support SAML in the future.
All right, great, thank you. Any other questions?
There's been a number of questions throughout the session today about Apex Item and you know, how do you create dynamic forms without Apex Item?
Well, great question. And just to reiterate, it's not gone yet. It's not deprecated yet. We don't recommend using Apex item for new development, and in the future it may go away. If you want to have similar functionality, please look at using interactive grids. We plan to extend interactive grids to kind of provide the kind of functionality that today's Apex item is used for. But yeah, so look at interactive grids. That's the future direction.
Excellent. And with the remote deployment, can we do remote deployment for pages?
Not yet. Right now, it's just, or for now in 20.1, it's just deploying the full application. But plans are to have similar capabilities like what you see for the component-based export-import to have similar capabilities for remote deployment.
Follow-on question to that is about remote deployment for database objects and whether we handle that and handle any errors that happen with that.
That's also not yet included, but again, we are looking at adding this in the future.
However, if you do have supporting objects, it will run the supporting object script as part of the install.
Right.
And we are out of time. So over to you to wrap it up, Mark.
Well, thank you, David, and thanks everybody for participating. We will make the recording available within a day or two. So yeah, you'll be able to watch the demos again. So thanks everybody for participating. Keep an eye on the Apex Office Hours website and keep an eye on future announcements. We'll have more of these in the future. Thanks everyone.